Here. She said loud. I can be very loud! That's Bratislava, but that's not really the point of it. The point I was, and it's not really either the wind turbines, although I did point Hakim to it to amuse him. It's that is the, that's Bratislava in the background. That's the Slovakian customs, that's the Austrian customs. The Cold Wall goes, I mean, it's very clear, it goes down there, down there, down there. That's Kitsi in Austria and so on. And yeah, spot the Cold War. It's the Iron Curtain, Cold War, brain. Look, I'm flustered. Slow down. The Iron Curtain ran through here. It's gone. History is fleeting. It's really quite weird. Anyway, let's try and actually stay on track and stop going blather, blather, blather. Oh, gee, I didn't disable my screensaver, did I? The non-butterfly effect. A universe where Camelia didn't flap her wings. Actually, Tom is my technical assistant. Can you go to settings and turn my screensaver off? So, what if there were no Perl 6? More accurately, what if John Allward had never thrown mugs? So, because you know, because there might, settings, system preferences, because you know, there might be a Perl 6. So I'm presenting you an alternate history where John Allward never threw the mugs. Which is more true than not. Some of the fake events are really based on truth. I've chosen a couple of things to flip so that we get an alternative history that's interesting. There's fake projects, but the details relate to real projects in our world. And the idea is to show why you would have problems in our world doing things. Okay, some things are just set up for joke. You turn it off? Yeah, cool. And I might take a couple of sideways looks at other projects and events. It's effectively like the game of Chrononauts. I must admit that I'm technically underprepared for this talk because I've never played Chrononauts. And also, I wasn't there for the mug throwing event. So, but that's about the only two things I wasn't there for, which was really quite scary. So, in Chrononauts we have things called linchpins, which are things you flip, and then they have ripples through history. And so I've got 2 or 3 linchpins, a couple of tangled together, and the rest is basically ripples. Yeah, good. I'm worried about my slides, but now I know what's going on. So there is some jargon in this. Oh, cool, my progress bar is there. So P5P stands for Perl 5 Porters. It's the main development mailing list for Perl. Bleed refers to Bleed Perl, which is the development master of Perl. The joke being roughly it's the bleeding edge. But at one level, what becomes relevant at times is if a commit lands on Bleed, effectively it doesn't exist. It's kind of pictures or doesn't happen. In this case, publish or it doesn't happen. If you don't actually make a release, well, what was the point of doing that commit? Which sort of becomes relevant in some ways. By XS, XS is the extension language of Perl 5, the guts, but I will use it for anything that talks directly to the guts and relies on how the current implementation is. Perl 6 projects back in our universe, fortunately, well, all have names. And remember, actually, technically, Perl 6 is just a specification and a spec test, so that's cool. And self-hosting might matter. Self-hosting is where you write a compiler in its own language. Most C compilers do this. And many other languages see it as a good goal. The downside of it is you have to do something called bootstrapping. How do you compile the first compiler? It's tricky. That adds some complexity. But the big upside of this is that the folks who use your language understand your compiler and can often help you write it, which can sort of be relevant. There are some disclaimers. This is what we should leave. Some jokes might be, well, too subtle or only for a few people, although I've tested this and some people might laugh. I'm not sure what my timing is, so you can ask questions possibly, but it might be easier to keep them to the end. I would definitely try and answer them at the end. I might go, also this is my universe, I'm God or surrogate for, so if I say it goes, it goes. My crystal ball for my alternate history gets fuzzy by the alternative year 2013, so we kind of run out at that point, which is fortunate because I think you want to leave by then as well. And you can thank Carl Mazak for this, because it's actually an original idea by him. We had this little chat, what if? And he got the key punchline. But in sort of fleshing this thing out, realised that I just could put so much more detail on. So we agreed that I would, yeah. So this is his idea, and I've taken it a long way. He does excellent presentations. I hope my standard gets somewhere near what he does. The illustrations, if there are any, are t-shirts, which will probably cause all sorts of fun with the AV stuff. Sorry. Where's my progress bar? Where am I? And I'm winging it on timing. So what happens about Larry? I've got to read the script on this one. It's quite good. Actually, yeah. Actually, back up that. Sorry, the illustration of the t-shirt, I forgot to do something. So I've got the t-shirt on, and this is clearly wrong. Pugs has always been on the Perl 6 roadmap. The infidels, the Python infidels are already surrendering, or something close to that. Well, that's not really relevant, is it? Because there was no pug. So that's going to have to come off. Right. It goes on. You can see this more. Right. So yeah, what do you do about Larry? Well, you see, what we do with Larry. I mean, you could have Larry pull an all-nighter, pair programming with Chuck Norris, and no, but the recording, it's gone red. That is it on again? Yeah, I fail. So yeah, he's been working for SpaceX all this time, but that's not that interesting. Although I mean, there's a sideline here possibly. Oh gee. A sideline possibly. Imagine these books with lots and lots of little figures all wearing Hawaiian shirts, and you have to find just the one with the moustache on. A kind of locate Larry book. No, maybe not. So instead, I've taken this idea that there's an alternative Larry in this timeline who did most of the things that he did here, just not the ones related to Perl 6, because, well, Perl 6 doesn't exist, does it? Or maybe it does. Let's get started. So, oh gee, yes, squeezy. So, just kind of before that, you get to the 90s. I hope my glorious, this isn't figuring my time out. And in 1996, there was Perl 5.03 released, 1997, 5.04, 1998, 5.05, and 01, 5 days later. This stuff all happens quite rapidly. And 1999, 5.03. Also in there, Chip Salzenberg started this project called Topaz, which was an experiment at rewriting Perl 5, done in C++. And it was initially announced at the Perl conference, and there we've got a URL for it. So that, yeah, now working with this millennia. So one of my questions is really, well, what about 6? Do I have a Perl 6 or not? What? So you see, Perl 5.6.0, the one that follows what I just described, was supposed to do Unicode, and it was really late. Not touching the button. I need to hold it close to my... Oh, God, yeah, I was told that. I'm sorry. Someone at the back needs a Nerf gun to remind me of things. So 5.6.0 was late. Schwern sends off Perl 1 releases. And there's already talk, maybe that thing that we're going to call 5.6.0 should be Perl 6. So I have kind of 3 possible versions of history that I could change to, where, one of them is where 5.6.0 was still called 6.0 about the same time, and 5.8.0 has better Unicode, and that was what was determined to be a Perl 6. Or, 5.6.0 itself was called 6.0.0 about the same time. Or 5.6.0 never happened, and Sarathi got the hint and released a 5.0.6 that was just 5.0.5 a year later with some stuff. And then a real 6.0.0 was done thoroughly around the time Yarko did it. 2 out of 3 they sort of converge. So that just seems easiest for the story, because I can have Perl 6 in my universe, Perl 5 here. Oh, and it sets up a good joke. Other relative timings stay the same, so all the things that took a long time still take a long time. So my real history has 5, and my alternate history has 6. So here we are in alternate 2000. My 0th linchpin I've decided that Unicode deserved a major bump. And it's kind of tangled up my first linchpin, the kind of thing of the talk. So, it is not me. Yeah. There are no mugs. And there's no Camelia. Yeah. Awesome. So obviously there's going to have to be a subtitled and annotated version of this on YouTube where we fill in all the words. Actually, effectively the script was written, so you can have the version of this without me muffing it up and actually better prose. So yeah, alternative 2000, no mugs, Unicode. So GSR releases 6.0.0, and it is marketing compatible with Unicode. Because it can't actually do Unicode I/O, it can't really do Unicode hash keys, and regular expressions are not actually polymorphic. In 6.0.0, maybe certain other ones, if you did that regular expression, what it actually did would change depending on whether the context it was compiled in was thinking it was UTF-8 or not, which meant it would muck your emoji bake and worse. So that's the alternative. So on the real one, in March, Sarathi actually released 5.6.0. In April, Chip released Topaz that, and then mugs were thrown. Perl 6 was announced. There were 361 requests for comment on it, and also in that year, on October 16th, Python 2 was released, which did Unicode. So doing Unicode was the thing around that time. Scary timing, whatever. What happens in? Oh, you missed a joke on that, by the way. What year is it? Yeah. 2001, the real one. And Parrot was an April Fool's joke originally by Simon Cousins, published on Perl.com, about a unification of Python and Perl. In April, that's about 15 months, whatever it was. No, about a year, 5.6.1 releases. Remember, those previous ones come out within about a month or so. This took a long time. August is the first check-in for the actual Parrot repository. And around this time, what was so jokingly referred to as the CPAN testing mafia started. There was realized that to do a Perl 16, the quality of test would have to improve a lot, and a lot of evangelism for test-driven development and similar started coming out around that time as a direct consequence of the Perl 6 project. In alternative year, 2001, Sarathi releases 6.0.1, and but there wasn't really any test-driven development, as I said. I'm talking too much. This is a mistake, isn't it? Oh, is that what I'm doing wrong? Yeah, it's 10 years. I haven't made this mistake for ages. So yeah, what about on resources? So yeah, one of the things is if there's no Perl 6, do I have lots more people who work on, there's no real Perl 6, do I have a lot more people who work on Bleed? Let's call it that. So yeah, in my alternative universe, there's at least 20 proposals on improving Perl 6 discussed on Perl 6 porters. You know, in these universes, they would have been what became those RFCs for Perl 6. And most of them, much like a universe, are valid problems, but the solution offers are less than awesome, as the Perl, whatever, as it's called. And the big conflict is the same conflict that was happening in our universe between the legacy code, you know, the stuff that actually makes you money, and people who want to improve things. Because everyone says they want new features, and what they completely forget to mention is that implicit is that their existing code works despite this. They sometimes forget this, but, you know. And yeah, MJD writes a critique about all this stuff, and it's published there. Oh wait, no, that's real. That's actually from our universe. And the weird, scary bit is 15 years later, it's still relevant to how you might do development. So yeah, do read that. There isn't an answer in there, just to carefully set stated problems. So I kind of assuming that because Perl 6 didn't come along and take all the new ideas off somewhere else, that you had the continuing conflict between all of this, and folks burned out on Perl 5 porters, so whilst there might be more folks coming in, there were more folks going out, and we have about the same amount of progress in Perl 6 porters, as it's called, in the alternate universe. This is an excuse that I don't have to suddenly say everything's faster. But I think it's real. So what happens to Topaz? Yeah, my little problem. Because of course, forgotten until Monday that, Topaz doesn't actually die because there's no reason. So I have to work out why Topaz dies. Now, the thing about Topaz was it's written in C++. It's much like the Python 2.3. It's not going to be 100% compatible. I think I'm still roughly on time, aren't I? Cool. It's not going to be 100% compatible. Much like Python 2.3, you're going to have to rewrite some stuff. So there would be a script written to try and make this easier called 6 to T. The idea being that you write regular Perl 6 code and it converts it to Topaz code. Because Chip still sees a valid reason that the internals are still good and we need to make a cleaner one. But it doesn't quite work. It's actually the same problem as Python's 2.3 has, and I only realized that a while back. You write really ugly code in the old language, and you can't use the new idiomatic features of the new language. So you can have the worst of both worlds. You're doing a whole lot more hoop jumping to write something that doesn't do it. It should have been like Cfront. It should have been 3 to 2, where you get to write new, beautiful Python 3, and it compiles it back to fugly Python 2. And at some point, either someone accidentally uses a feature that it doesn't, the back compiler doesn't support, and we have to upgrade. And, oh, cool. Or just you do it anyway. And so, yeah, that would be the same failing of this. The other thing, of course, is because it's completely different internals, there's no XS. This is both a feature and a bug. The feature is obviously it's not horribly ugly. The bug is, well, is that all the existing Perl extensions don't work. And as Ovid said on the first day, CV like it's 1999, it's DBI, class DBI, makes an LTT, and brain forgets the last CGI.pm. And the whole database thing was actually a really big feature of Perl 5 because, wow, you can load up 2 or more database drivers in the same process, and copying from Sybase to Oracle is just ding, ding, whoa, not there. The last bit is this thing about lack of self-hosting, the intersection of the number of Perl programmers and the ones who know C++. Well, basically, it fizzles out because it doesn't actually solve enough problems. And so, yeah, sorry, Topaz. So what happens in 2002 in the real world? So in July, Yarko releases 5.8.0. It's got IThreads. This is cool. IThreads aren't actually that efficient, and they have bugs because of how the internals work. The trouble with the internals is, the API, well, there is an API, but what it exposes are C structures. There's direct data access to the structures. And the particularly evil one to try and figure out is this one, SVPVX, which gives you direct access to the character buffer inside the center of Perl. And the rules have sort of changed now that it might be a sequence of characters stored as UTF-8, or it might be a sequence of bytes that we are now treating as Latin 1. Anyway, this is really, really fixed. Worse, so it's a fixed layout. You do this thing, and the rest of the internals do not know whether you asked for this pointer because you're reading it or writing to it, and they gave you a pointer, and they have no idea when you stop being interested. So you can't really write an emulation layer that fakes it for them, and then pulls it back into the desired representation when they've stopped, because you don't know when they stopped. There's no difference between getters and setters. You don't know what's writing and what's not. Well, this is an ongoing problem with trying to rewrite the core and still keeping CPAN working. Told you there was some real-world stuff here. So in alternative, 2002, Yarko releases 6.2.0. It addresses all those 3 deficiencies of 6.0, what I told you, IO hashes and regex, and it has iThreads. And they promise to be better than the seg being 5.0.5 threads, and it has all the exact problems I described. So it still sucks in the way that ours sucks. Did I miss anything? Nah, 2003. In September, that's, I think, 15 months later, this stuff's really slowed down. Yarko released that. In November, I released 5.8.2. In December, Damien got a grant to work on a project called Perl 6 Rules. And some point in there, a project called Pony started, which stood for Perl on a New Internals Engine, which was mostly set up as a joke because I want Pony. You see, what Arthur Bergman had been wanting iThreads to work better, and realized that really you needed to use functions to access data, vtables as they're usually called, and you can do this in C, and Parrot has started offering this, and this would be a way to solve the threading issues. So to rewrite or graft half of Perl 5 onto this internals that have vtables, you could actually make some sort of concurrency that was kind of useful rather than just sucking. The other thing that starts way back there that you might not be aware of is PyPy, the Python on Python, the self-hosted Python implementation. That's how long ago it started. It only kind of reached speed parity with CPython a few years ago. So many of these things are much older than you think. What happens in Alt 2003? Well, Yarko shipped 6.2.1. Red Hat ship Enterprise Linux with 6.2.0 and 3/4. Yeah, that was a bit less than awesome. And as I said, that one takes a long time. Yeah, and SUSE ships with a different RC. No, sorry, and yeah, there's all these slightly different versions. It's kind of sucky. And then I released, alternatively, sorry, I released a 6.2.2. And again, this is where the other joke comes in. Arthur has been thinking about vtables, and again he asks his boss for time to work on it. So we have the BUFFIE project, better use functions for increased efficiency. Yeah, and it was only really named that because London Perlmongers couldn't think of a backronym for Willow. Gotcha! Well, different universes, you need a sideways time traveler, yeah. Yeah, there might be another joke coming up. Anyway, I'm glad that one worked. So, real 2004, yeah, me, I released 5.8.3, 5.8.4, 5.8.6, 5.8.5, 6. That was the wrong order, good grief. Unfortunately, Perl 6 rules died. This is kind of relevant. Now, Damien had assumed he was going to use lexicals inside code blocks in regular expressions to do the part of the work. I can't remember exactly if it was emitting, anyway, but it fails, and he got to the point of realizing this wasn't going to work, and maybe he needed to write his own regular expression engine to do it. And then he just realized that, oh dear, that's beyond the pale. So he abandoned the project. And the best I know it, he never took any of the money for that, because he's honorable. So sadly it didn't happen. But it shows you one of these problems. It's also the oldest file in the YARV tarball, yet another Ruby virtual machine, the Ruby rewrite. So that is really old as well. 25 minutes. Oh, I'm closing in. I might be a bit slow. In Alt 2004, Alternative Me releases all of those, which is really cool. We've got regular rhythm, but about half the changes only are in there can be backported because it's a merging of to have no breaking changes. It's a massive amount of work, and half the stuff just doesn't exist. Well, publisher, it didn't happen. It's only in bleed, so there's a lot of work going on that never sees the light of day. And as I think, wherever Abigail made a legitimate complaint about that. There's all this stuff, but we don't get to see it. True. We've also lost the rhythm of regular releases because whatever I call them, the main sequence, are trying really hard to be, well, if you upgrade without testing, it shouldn't break. The stuff of, we know it's going to break a few things, you need to upgrade, just isn't happening. So people have got stuck on this release, or this series of releases. Oh God, I haven't got my joke on. And so that was one of the problems. The final thing is happens that Buffy is slain following a management reshuffle. The problem is that the internal sponsor has given the shove. This joke has signed a non-disclosure agreement. Please address any further questions to Gina Jones on 0208, whatever it is, 88588000. Actually, the disclaimer is that do not call that number, because it is the Canon Europe switchboard number in Stockley Park, and if Gina Jones is still working there, she will have no idea. She's innocent. And anyway, the joke that actually relates to is about 4 years in the future. So we forget that one. But there was an insight from Buffy in there, and Pony in our world, that the macros, the large number of macros in the Perl core don't affect, most programs are agnostic to the exact structure layout. You can change the layout of how the structures are, providing the macros stay the same, and this was then applied to Bleed to reduce the memory usage. So it had some benefits. In 2005, I'm looking scared. Oh, I am probably actually slow. The PHP6 project was started. In May, I released 5.8.7. My rhythm has slowed down a lot here, and Pugs was started. Originally by Audrey to, Taiwan's digital something minister, whoa, to explore junctions. In alternative 2005 year, I ship 6.2 that, Red Hat ships 6.2.5. So that's their second release on the 6 Blast series, and in our world, the second release on the 5.8 series. They're getting stuck. 2006, well, in January I released 5.8.8. March is the first commit in the Rakudo repository. April the 5th, back in 2006, is the Python 3000 announcement. That's how long ago it was. October, Eves lands some stuff in Bleed to do named captures, and that includes subroutine calls. Now, regular expressions in Perl were never that regular, but this makes them as powerful as grammars. That's relevant later. I should also note, Rakudo depends on having power. Oh yeah, Moose starts. God, I missed that. Moose starts. Moose, by Stefan Little, Stefan, damn it, not here, is based on his work on doing objects in pugs. Pugs depends on mug throwing. So my alternative universe, there is no moose. Well, not yet, maybe. I released that, Redhat stuck. Now, they've been trying, but Math Parry fails its tests on version 6.3.4. And it certainly back then was Fedora, but there was a policy of Fedora that stuff shouldn't go in unless it passes tests. And yeah, Ilya's code was so crazy it wasn't working. 2007, what in the real world? Well, the progress bar is looking about half, isn't it? March 12th, Ruby 1.86 is released. That's Matt's Ruby interpreter, the original one. December, Raphael releases 5.10. Christmas Day, Ruby 1.9, YARF, that thing I mentioned, that's Ruby doing Unicode. So now Ruby's got to Unicode as well. And they've done a rewrite. What? Yeah. Yeah, but they don't seem to do release candidates. You get whatever happens at Christmas, as far as I can tell. In alternative 2007, yeah, Redhat ships with 6.2, whatever. Raphael releases 6.4.0. He breaks the Glasgow Haskell compiler bootstrap because he's removed $. Yeah, there are no there are no lambda camels in this universe. Oh dear, that t-shirt has to go. And in the alternate universe to date, that's the biggest interaction between the Perl and Haskell communities. YAPC Europe, the post-YAPC Europe party in Dom's flat, a group of people proposed to do an internals rewrite. Now, is this something to do with a bottle of whiskey? Who knows? Now, I can't actually remember what the bottle of whiskey was. That's not because I drank too much of it. I did ask someone who did. It's because there was this other linchpin there where I spent a bunch of time, and it's not really related to this talk, apart from, you know, how the blah, 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 house building project that came out of that delayed preparation. You know, little things change history. So, what about Cube? Yeah. Cube, we're on time. Cube. This is the internals project. Now, it's a register machine. It's much like our timelines, more Parrot and more VM, which both decided to be register machines. It's attempting to do threads right, because we're becoming aware that there are more and more multi-core machines, or that's the future. It takes most of its design is like Parrot in our universe, because this is what I'm trying to explain. It writes bytecode files out. It has an assembly language. It's not self-hosting. It's still C. It's got a peg parser in this case. Now, the title of it is officially Perl: The Next Generation, because its codename is Cube. Now, officially, this is short for cubic zirconia, partly because it's an artificial gemstone, and partly because it's hard. Not to that. But, you know, the real thing is it's Borg Cube. The plan is to assimilate Perl. Yeah, we want to be Perl 7. This is a laudable goal. Many people applaud. Some of them even help. How it happens. 2008. So on May the 31st, Ruby 1.87 is released. December the 3rd, Python 3.0 is released. That's them doing Unicode doing better. That's how long ago Python 3 came. December, I released 5.8.9. God, I'm being terrible with the microphone, aren't I? In alternative 2008, alternative me releases 6.2.9. Everything's still roughly on the same schedule. Real 2009, January, Ruby 1.9.1. But it does take 3.5 years until Debian managed to make that their default. April, Oracle announced they purchased Sun, and therefore effectively Java. June, Python 3.1, and 6 years later, 2.7 is still the default everywhere, well, except Arch. You see, these transitions are slow. What am I missing on my notes? August, Dave eventually releases 5.10.1. That's a really massive gap. There's 5.11.1, and we have the start of regular bleed releases. Jesse starts getting everything releasing once a month. Now that actually depends on Jesse having first done that for Parrot. So in our universe, that comes from there. And it's the first commit in the NQP repository, which I can't remember the exact plan, but eventually became self-hosting. That obviously depends on Parrot. Now, the other thing that started is modern Perl, which immediately makes a very large impact. What happened in alternative 2009? Well, there hasn't been Moose. There hasn't been this massive testd. Modern Perl doesn't really exist there. What do my notes say? So there's no Perl Renaissance. That's a bugger. I like this t-shirt. It's going to have a go. Fortunately, this looks nice and safe. It's a yeah, Frankfurt t-shirt. Oh, hands. It's Perl 6 in our universe. Uh-oh. Fortunately, I have an alternative universe Frankfurt t-shirt. Might technically be some anachronism on here, but you know, fixing history is hard. Dave releases 6.4.1. Now, what's different in this universe is that the problems in this have not been found by testing, because there's a lot less test-driven development. There's also this thing referred to as the BBC, you know, not the Pinko commies, the ones I like, you know. But Bleed Perl breaks CPAN. Andreas Koenig in particular, religiously, that's not the right word, very, very effective at testing as much as possible of CPAN against the most recent releases of the Perl trunk. In between releases as well, you know, and just this module broke, what are we going to do about it? This is brilliant, but that does rely on having tests. There are many fewer tests in the alternative universe, so there is a lot of pain, and it's not found until Dave releases 5.10.1, because you know, like our 6 whatever 1, because like in our universe, no one really tests a .0, and they end up thinking one's going to be perfect, and no, it isn't. So there's a lot more commercial pressure to stay on alternative me 6.2 6.2 branch. Yeah. Oh, I said to read my notes, and I think I've done it all. Yeah, what happened to Cube? Well, the plan is kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Cube is go. Right, start by doing Perl 1, then Perl 2, Perl 3, Perl 4, Perl 5, and then this universe Perl 6. Basically build up the complexity. Now, doing Perl 1 with a peg parser is just fine. Perl 3 gets to be a bit hard. You've got here docs in Perl 3, and they aren't, you know, you can't just keep treating your white space as white space, because you've now also got syntax that's line-oriented. So your peg parser, your regular parsers are not going to find that very easy. This is a hole in this plan of go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that a few people who started doing it were going to have problems with, and thank Audrey for telling me that one a while back. Your real problem comes when you get to Perl 5 and begin blocks. It's very, very hard to reconcile the begin blocks with the parser, because the begin blocks change how the parser passes, and you have to run the code immediately. So your parser, you know, reach begin block, we have to stop parsing, run some code, come back. Parsers aren't designed to do that. How do they get around that? What's even really hard is to reconcile that with bytecode. How do you serialize the side effects of compile time actions to bytecode and bring it back? And worse, you've got two different bytecodes that did something and you want to compile them separately and load them back together. How do you reconcile that? It's the same problem that MoreVM has. It's really hard to do. Jonathan has solved. Oh, maybe Alt Larry, but I'm going to say Alt Larry wasn't smart enough. Or no, Alt Larry found he had better things to do, because Alt Larry has a go at rewriting B, but it ultimately failed to be useful. He took the original B and he discarded the crazy text-based assembly format and tried to do binary storage of it using roughly a improved storable, also storing the ops as binary. But effectively, it could only serialize whole program state. There wasn't a link phase. And then even then, it didn't really work trying to serialize begin blocks, because that's why certain things are officially outlawed in Perl 6 in begin, although Jonathan tries to support them anyway. So, yeah. What about Redhat and Math Parry? Well, they can't get Math Parry to pass tests on 6.4.0. It'd be a policy violation to upgrade Redhat Enterprise Linux to it, because it's failing. And also, there's a lot more customer pressure here into to stick on the previous branch that alt.me released. So instead, in Fedora and then Redhat, they opt to put in 6.2.9. That's my second linchpin. This is, I mean, artistic license in the other sense. I've changed the story, but it also sets up a joke later. But it is like the real world, and it's kind of like Python. Python 2.7 missed the cut for that by a few months, which is why Python 2.6 was Redhat standard for a very long time. And yeah, there is this tension between new versions versus not tested, not finished, or something breaking. Yeah, I think we're roughly going. 2010, in April, 5.12, real universe, 5.12.0, 5.12.1, 5.12.2, March 11th, PHP6 is killed. July the 3rd, Python 2.7. That August is when Google Oracle first sued Google over the Java APIs. And November the 10th, in our universe, Red Hat Linux ships with 5.10.1 and Python 2.6. Cube, well, Cube was struggling, but finally Cube snuffs it. You see, classic Perl needs timely destroy. People rely on destroy running at the right time. Now, the parrot plan for this was something called high priority garbage collection. The idea was that you would track all the objects that needed this, and every time you got to scope exit, you'd run around, look for them, and if they're gone, then they fire their destructor. It's kind of viable. You end up having to trace all the routes down to them. But the trouble comes with real threads, because if you've got more than one thread, effectively, you have to stop the world in all threads at the end of scope. In every thread says, I've reached end of scope, we must do a half a garbage collection run, and all the other threads have to stop to do it. So, a real pain. So they switched to green threads instead, i.e. one CPU and emulate threads on it, which was good enough for Python and Ruby, so it should be good enough for Cube. I think ref counting would have similar problems with threads. So, yeah, Python or Piston, whatever you pronounce it, Python rewrite has just gone to reference counting because it was the only way to keep the C API behaving the same for the existing C extensions. I'm too fast. Reference counting, I think, will have real problems with threads as well. So I'm really not sure how you can reconcile threads and the behavior that Perl 5 has. There's more on Cube. The joke. Yes, function signatures work. Now, because of the way that function calls aren't really lists, you could actually get that to work by putting the two arrays on the stack as arrays and having the function entry stuff knowing what to do, because you don't actually use that underscore. But the trouble is that return values won't. So just in our universe, just like in our universe, everything will end up in stats, because it all gets smushed into a list. No one's noticed this. And you've still got the trap of our universe that bytes and chars don't have separate types. It's still Perl, basically this thing is Perl 5, Perl 6, whatever I'm calling it. So you don't have this big, you don't solve the, you still have the problem that you have in Perl 5 these days of is it a character or was it bytes, and I don't know. It doesn't solve that. And finally, as your Ruby is no good unless it runs Rails. Basically, the only real test of these rewrites is whether the existing applications can run fast enough. And in my hypothetical universe, yeah, the benchmark was to run Spam Assassin and Frozen Bubble, and the XS emulation layer was so pants they were just not fast enough. So it doesn't really work out. Cube dies. What else happens in all? Oh yeah. So well, in our universe, Real Larry was working on one point the Java Perl lingo, MAD, the abstract syntax tree, Perl 5, and I think I'm confusing Viv and STD. I'll get heckled if I get this too wrong, which was a parser for Perl 6. Why have I written no alt? Anyway, a parser for Perl 6 written in Perl 5. And it's, so alt Larry, I would assume instead would have worked more on same sort of things, inline Java, B as I said, and effectively try and do fast ascent. Try and parse Perl in Perl. Because I mean, you've got parsing Perl 6 in Perl, so why not? Basically, parse. Damon always had this project possibly to do a follow-up to fast rect ascent. So my idea would be that probably, you know, those regular expressions things I mentioned from Eves, probably Perl regular expressions are now as powerful as grammars or getting that way. Larry notices this in my alternate universe and starts trying to write the Perl parser using Perl 5 regular expressions. Now, as Real Larry points out on Wednesday, one of the reasons this is really painful is that in Perl 5, nesting regular expressions, they don't pass their results back in any clean way. So this is looking cool. It's hard, but it's cool. But you can't actually get self-hosting yet, because unless you can parse it, you can't yet emit any grammar rules, because you can't use lexicals in can't use lexicals properly, so you can't do the emitters. You can't make the abstract syntax tree. You can say this program's cool, but you can't do anything useful. It's not really there yet. And yeah, in Alt 2010, Red Hat ships with 6.2.9, not 6.4, whatever. We've been on the same release, same main release for 4 in a row. Now, are they ever going to shift? I mean, Larry's plan relies on using the newer regular expressions, but that release isn't in Red Hat. And what happened about 6.6.0? Well, in this universe, we haven't had the regular releases yet, so everything's kind of starting to run late. You know, Jesse got 5.12 out because he'd done regular releases already. That hasn't happened. Oh, I'm flagging. I need coffee. That'd be dangerous. I obviously have enough jokes. I'm going to laugh for a bit. 2011, 5.12.3, 5.14.0, 5.14.2, blah, 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 blah. July is the earliest commit for what Dave called reval jumbo fix. This is getting lexicals to work in regular expressions, is what you need to end up making the regular expression engine capable of being a parser type thing. This took a long time to get right, and this is the thing Damien had problems with years earlier. July was also when Java 7 came along with the invoke dynamic instruction, which is really useful for dynamic languages. And September 5.14.2 was released. What happens? Well, Cube effectively has stalled. Finally, a year later, Jesse ships his first release. His monthly release cycle starts. But I mean, does it really matter? Because Redhat are still stuck on 2 versions back. And it's not clear whether all this stuff that's being now nicely monthly released and so on matters to anyone in the world, because they've kind of gone the other way. It's a bit like Python 3, and did it matter when everyone's still using Python 2.7? Only I have some notes here. It was a genuine fear of the Perl 5 core committers that some of the Linux distributions might decide that it was cheaper or easier just to keep doing 5.8.8, probably 5.8.8 forever, and do build and security fixes, than to put the effort into actually pushing things over. This didn't happen for Perl. It might happen for Python. I don't know. It nearly happened for Ruby. Because it took a long time for the last thing that Debian needed to get Ruby working on 1.9. I think I'm ahead of myself. So the thing is, where is my... everyone's wondering, is the user base stuck on 6.2 forever? What about these rewrites? They've promised a bunch of stuff. Where is my flying car? A lot of people start grumbling that they want a Perl 7. Happens in that universe too. Yeah. And this is early, but there's a big percentage. A guy called Steven Dammit starts Mo 2 years early. Unfortunately, he can't use Alt Larry's regular expression-based parser to do it, because it doesn't yet actually produce a syntax tree. So he has to start using the Scala. So he does it in Scala, and it's not self-hosted. So it's just like our universe. I cheat. I make things the same whenever I can. 2012, April. Jonathan starts more VM in stealth mode. No one knows about this. 5.16 comes in. Intentionally, of course, about a month later, to give it a year to shake out, Dave merges the jumbo fix. June, Ruby, end of life's the last MRI. Same month, Debian managed to switch to 1.9.1. It's taken 3.5 years. These transitions are really slow. August 5.16, 5.14. I'm losing my voice. Now, what about Mo? It's got the same kind of things as we have in our universe. It's just happened a bit early. It's kind of actually, it's technically Sturgeon's revelation, 90% of everything is crap. Well, Perl's actually the other way around. It's kind of inverse. 90% of everything is cool, 10% is crap. Even better, most folks agree what that 10% is and want to kill it. So yeah, like type bobs die, arrow becomes dot, I can't remember. Now, the trouble is, just because we agree what 10% is crap, we will end up using about 1% of it. And a different 1%. So, yeah, right, so yeah, tie, that sucks. Let's go to tie. Oops, there goes DBI. He uses tie. Type globs, nah, don't like those. But they're inside of every I/O module and every exporter module. Strict everywhere, that sounds cool. That kills all the exporter modules on CPAN as well, did you know? Prototypes, get rid of them. As Stefan, I think, noted, Tess Moore is using prototypes. If you're in a hurry, it's the fastest way to destroy CPAN. Yay. So yeah, you have language design made sane. That's kind of cool. But you have to rewrite an awful lot of your code to do it. Is the pain worth the gain? And there's no XS, so you have to rewrite all the internals unless you have a better plan for that. Now, also, finally, the problem is not all Larrys are nice, not even all Californian Larrys. Yeah, there's that one who's suing Google. Not the nice one up there. And the other problem with the JVM is the startup of it is really slow. The author, Charles Nutter, the author of JRuby, is pretty confident they have the best Ruby implementation out there, except it takes ages to start up because it's on the JVM, and he thinks that's why they haven't got more adoption. Mo potentially has the same problem. So, yeah, in the real universe, Stefan starts on Mo. February, PyPy celebrates its 10th birthday. They realized they'd been going a long time when they did that. March, plenty of releases. April, NQP now on the JVM. There's a Google Summer of Code project starts for MQP on the JavaScript backend. In June, Ruby end of life for security stuff as well. In July, more VM is revealed to the world, 5.18. The weirdo bit is in December, Ruby unend of lives 187 and 192. I never quite got why. I think there was a security fix, and it also turned out, I think Heroku or somewhere, the hosting service still had many, many customers on these very vulnerable things, running Rails that they couldn't upgrade. Oh yeah, upgrades are hard. So they found it cheaper to do a security fix than to port people across. It's weird. And then actually, and it didn't fit on the previous slide, they re-end of life it, because they didn't last forever. Cheer up, I'm near the end. In Alt 2013, in the universe, just like ours actually, the not very regular stuff from Eves and Dave is merged. This is actually the point where you could probably write a self-hosting Perl 5, or this universe Perl 6. But the little infrastructure bits have taken a very long time to get there. So what is actually the point of this, apart from to make everyone laugh or cry or something? Well, no, did I actually miss anything? No, I didn't. Yeah, re-implementations take a long time. Re-implementations take, even when you've got them, a re-implementation, it takes people a long time to migrate to it. Operator error. It takes a long time to migrate to it. If you're just doing a re-implementation, you can't make the language fundamentally better. You still got the same, but you've got to do that, otherwise why is one going to migrate? And the last one, and possibly subtle, is that deep architectural changes are hard. As far as I know, no existing C-based language has managed to retrofit multi-core concurrency back into their system and keep it compatible. I'm not even sure they've done it and managed to make it incompatible. So yeah, Python 3 is still has global interpreter lock. Yarv still is green threads. Mats has acknowledged that for his next Ruby rewrite. He says he needs to solve that. But yeah, if you'd done all these rewrites in those days, you wouldn't have got to multi-core. And that's going to be the big problem, as someone was joking it all the way down to your watch is a multi-core now, and so on. The second thing I wanted to make is that comparison. Even if you didn't have a Perl 6 project in our universe, the Perl 5 core is still neither easy or fun to work on, and the code doesn't get any better. It doesn't likely massively increase the number of volunteers available to you, because you still need crazy fools who like hacking C. You probably would get more re-implementations in this alternate universe. C, Python, and Ruby, there's plenty of those. But I think they would founder, they wouldn't do too well, because of the amount of excess code that we actually rely on, all on CPAN. Jonathan noted when he tried to test stuff, he wanted to redo it on Perl 6, that he would go down the dependency chain, I hit excess module, oh, that's not a good choice. There's lots of it out there. It's also that you would set on these projects and you wouldn't realize that it was going to be so hard, because everyone kind of thought Python transition was going to work fine. You wouldn't know until about 2011 that it really wasn't a great way to do it, which is possibly too long. 5.12 and all those yearly releases would start later. A bunch of good stuff. A bunch of good stuff that actually came from Parrot from just won't happen that far. And it might be irrelevant because, in my universe at least, they get stuck. Those releases, no one uses it. It doesn't really matter. It's the tree falling when no one's listening. So and I know it's artistic license in my universe, but 5.8 was pretty good. Python 2.7 is demonstrating it's pretty good, and no one wants to transition. Not enough want to transition. And Ruby got close to it in Debian of not transitioning. So it's a risk. You make a new version that nobody wants to move to, and you're stuck with the old one. I think there's 2 slides left. Mo in my universe is earlier. There's basically more need for that rewrite earlier. Mo would keep going for longer because, God, it's the only hope. But I don't think it would have any more success ultimately than it did here. Test-driven development will take a lot longer to get adopted in my alternate universe, and these two are Mazak's insights. TDD would take a lot longer. Moose will be much later or never, and I'm sorry, I killed the Perl Renaissance. What I actually want, I want it all. I want fast startup. I want meaningful CPAN compatibility, and I want multi-core concurrency. And in my alternate universe, whatever I do, however I flip the linchpins, I can't see a way to get there. Can't really even get 2 out of those 3, let alone 3 out of 3. Whereas, at least in our universe, MoreVM and Rakudo or Topit have got fast startup and meaningful multi-core concurrency for real. And yeah, you can inline stuff, so you kind of got a bit towards meaningfully C compatible, but you know, that's 2 out of 3. That's better than my alternate universe. So, you know, my alt universe is different, but it's certainly not better. And that's the end. That's Vienna. Thank you. That actually worked. Are there questions, or will I just point things in this picture? Yeah, that's the Danube. That's most of Vienna. That's the airport down the bottom. I did work this out if you zoom it in, which is not going to be possible here. We're currently living about here, and the building project I mentioned is about there. Right, yeah, I think technically there are 6 minutes till 5 minutes to the end of the slot, but I seem to have scared everyone. Larry hasn't thrown anything at me yet. Shall I give you
This does not materially affect your alternate future, but I do believe that Topaz was abandoned before the mugs were thrown.
Well, as I threatened, I did use CVE. Yes, it might have been. I used no, gee, it wasn't. CVS, so yeah, I got my hands dirty, so you don't have to. And I don't know what's more scary, that I used CVS or I found it was already installed on my laptop. One, whatever it is tagged in April, but there were commits to the CVS repository until August. But yeah, I think
he was in the process of giving it up already.
All right, okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. Yeah,
partly because we said he couldn't change anything.
Ah. But then you did.
Well, but that was because mugs are thrown.
Ah. Yeah, history's complicated, isn't it?
You said that you don't know whether you can reconcile reference counting with multi-threading.
Yeah.
PHP has a reference counting algorithm that was extended to deal with cycles. And they took that from a paper which is about a JVM implementation, and they said they used that algorithm in a multi-threaded environment. So I think it's possible.
Okay, that might mess up history. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it might be. It would be interesting. It would still be hard. I know that Python has a cycle counter, and in theory you could do that in Perl as well, and you wouldn't need to weaken things. Eventually you would collect it.
They still have their global interpreter law.
Oh yeah, they still have their global, but yeah, I didn't realize that could multi-thread things. Thank you. Oh dear. I'd have to find a way to kill that now. Let's see if I can do that by next week. Anyone else? Shall I shut up? I scared you all. Oh. Yeah, I need to find my way back to the alternate universe.
Why does your alternate t-shirt have a butterfly?
Yeah, that was my anachronism. I think I might have a patch for that. Hang on, last joke. No. I lost it. No, failed joke. I was going to stick a unipearl over it, but yeah, that was my anachronism. I realised that on the throne this morning. Yeah, trust someone in the not second row to ask that. Well spotted. Yeah, it's black. Yeah. Yeah, but as I said yesterday, fixing history is hard. I need patches. No more being photographs. We call that a wrap. Thank you.